Welcome back, everyone. We are officially at the finish line. The Pit Season 2 is rapidly approaching its highly anticipated finale, and the writers have placed one massive, terrifying question mark right in the center of the story. What is going to happen to Dr. Robbie? Throughout this entire season, we have watched our brilliant attending physician slowly crumble under the weight of his own mind. The showrunners have been masterfully dropping subtle clues, drastic behavioral shifts, and heartbreaking dialogue that all point toward a massive turning point for his character. Will he finally find peace, or are we heading toward an absolute tragedy? Today, we are going to do a massive deep dive into the psychology of our favorite doctor. We will break down the 3 biggest fan theories circulating the internet regarding his final fate, analyze the hidden foreshadowing you might have missed, and predict exactly how Season 2 will close its curtains. Grab a seat, prepare yourselves emotionally, and just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Let's break it all down. Let's start with the most widely discussed and undeniably the most heartbreaking theory surrounding this finale: the possibility that Dr. Robbie might take his own life. If we look back at the man we met in the very first season, he is entirely unrecognizable today. The current version of Robbie is a hollow, emotionally depleted shadow of his former self. He has built massive, impenetrable walls around his heart, refusing to let anyone from the outside world in. But the most alarming shift is his complete loss of basic human empathy. Look at his horrific reaction to Dr. Mohan's panic attack. Instead of offering the medical compassion he is trained to give, he brutally lashed out at her, essentially telling her to get over it because he didn't have the time. He wasn't just yelling at her, he was actively projecting his own suffocating internal trauma onto his staff. He expects everyone around him to suppress their emotions simply because that is the toxic coping mechanism he uses to survive. But the biggest red flag came during the Orlando situation, when Robbie boldly assumed that Orlando's medical emergency was a deliberate attempt to escape his crushing financial debt. The tone in his voice was terrifying. It wasn't just a clinical observation, it sounded like genuine relatability. It felt like the writers were subtly hinting that Robbie intimately understands the actual effort that some people go through to plan their own demise.
Desire to just make the pain stop. And we cannot forget that devastating conversation with Dana. Seeing a man who is notoriously cold and closed off literally break down in tears, questioning if he will ever return from his upcoming break, was harrowing. It is a well-known psychological fact that those suffering the most often hide their true pain, making indirect cries for help right before it's too late. Even Dr. Rabbit picked up on these alarming behavioral changes, sensing that his colleague is slipping into an abyss. The tragic irony here is that the blood-soaked, chaotic emergency room is the only thing keeping Robbie tethered to reality. The prospect of a 3-month sabbatical terrifies him because he has absolutely no emotional connections outside those hospital doors. Add in the crushing grief of losing Roxy and Louie, plus the terrifying 50% mortality rate hovering over his good friend Juke, and you have a man drowning in despair. If someone doesn't step in to pull him out of the dark, this season could end in the ultimate tragedy. If the writers decide against a self-inflicted tragedy, there is a second highly plausible theory that revolves entirely around a devastating accident, specifically a fatal motorcycle crash.
Let's talk about visual foreshadowing. The cinematography in recent episodes has been incredibly deliberate. We saw a highly symbolic opening sequence where Robbie is casually riding his motorcycle right alongside a speeding ambulance. But the most glaring detail? He is not wearing a helmet. Think about how absurd this is. This is a top-tier emergency room attending, a man who spends his entire life trying to put broken bodies and shattered skulls back together, carelessly risking his own life on the asphalt. Riding dangerously close to an ambulance without protective gear feels like a massive flashing neon sign from the directors. It feels like a direct setup for a scene where his colleagues are forced to treat him on their own operating tables. Furthermore, we have to look at the rule of 3 in storytelling. The show has deliberately placed a heavy focus on motorcycle accidents recently. First, we witnessed a patient brought into the ER who died precisely because he wasn't wearing a helmet, a case Robbie was directly involved in. Then we saw a second biker who miraculously survived a horrific crash simply because he had his helmet on, yet he foolishly refused to wait before riding again.
So, which of these three paths will the showrunners take? For the longest time, the heavy-handed dialogue and his terrifying emotional detachment firmly convinced me that we were heading toward a dark, self-inflicted ending. The psychological signs were just too loud to ignore. However, as we inch closer to the finale, my perspective is shifting. I truly believe that the show is setting us up for a massive misdirection. I think Robbie is planning a permanent exit from the medical field. The motorcycle imagery and the dark dialogue are brilliant red herrings designed to make us fear for his life, when in reality, we should be mourning the end of his career. But, as we all know, words in this universe are layered with double meanings. With only 2 episodes left on the calendar, the ultimate truth is just around the corner. Whatever happens, we are undoubtedly steering straight into a storm of tears and heartbreak. But I want to pass the question over to you. Which theory do you believe is actually going to happen? Is Robbie going to suffer a tragic accident? Will he leave the ER forever? Or are we heading toward the darkest possible outcome? Let me know your definitive finale predictions in the comments down below. If you love this deep dive, please do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our massive Season 2 finale breakdown coming soon. Check out the playlist on your screen for more videos, and I will see you in the next one.